You've had a gender, girl or boy from the start. It's part of your spirit, your body, your heart.
If we don't brainwash our children, the world will. It's like this idea of brainwashing, it goes both ways.
Elementary school, and I think I was looking up like Legos or something. I was looking up boys' toys.
Oh, yeah. No.
One of the most common places kids first get exposed to pornography or experiment sexually with another kid is at sleepovers.
That our children are getting baptized into religion they never even consented to. It's through our media.
And it's like, yeah, we don't do that. I was just like, thank you, Dad. Oh.
And now, let us reason together.
Welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm, and today we are joined by a fine panel of guests. We got with us Austin Falter of Falter Media. We've got Tember Harward, and today we are gathered because Austin recently came out with something more controversial than a young man who can only carry one chair, and that is a rhyming Family Proclamation book for children. So, Austin, can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind this book?
Sure. I like reading books to my kids. And so earlier this year, I wrote actually it was last year, I wrote a book, a family story of one of my kids' great-great-great-grandfathers. And after I, wrote that and started reading it to him, a few days in, my son would say, "I miss Grandpa." Like, which grandpa? And he'd be like, "John." Well, he never met John, but he knew his story. And so I could tell that the books that we were reading at night were having an impact. And that's when I got the idea. I was like, what if because I was thinking, how do we take this Family Proclamation that we talk about all the time and instill it in my kids? And so I thought, what if we write a kid's book and make it fun, like that Grandpa John book? So that's where it really came.
That's super cool. Side tangent. Talk to me about the Grandpa John book. Because, I mean, that sounds like a great project in itself to get family history into the minds of the young ones.
It was really cool. And I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to do more. So I got the idea from the John book from using the app Midjourney, that AI app that does
it's a great app, yeah.
Text to photo. And I was like, whoa, you can generate really custom images, where before I wanted to make some family history books, but I was like, I'm not going to pay an artist for this. It would get real expensive real quick. So with Midjourney, I was able to kind of bring those family stories to life in a way. And so, I took an autobiography from my great-great-grandfather and I put it into little sections of a book, little sections of his story. I got the Midjourney images. And then for some of the sections, I actually put the quotes from the actual autobiography and put them on a full page because the story was too good to take out. So you still got some of his words in there. But my kids love it. It's really, and he was one of those characters that just shows up in history in all these cool moments like Forrest Gump. And so it's really it was a fun book.
That's awesome. Because I heard somewhere, I think I remember reading a study that said if children know their family history, they actually become more resilient emotionally, mentally, spiritually than their peers.
After 9/11, they did a study on this, a pretty great study about, what helps people bounce back. And those who knew where they came from, those who knew their family history, they were more resilient. Teens specifically.
That's awesome. So that's a great side project for all you LDS dads out there that are like, hey, how do I teach my kids? How do I get them excited about temple and family history? Right. Get into Midjourney, start creating some cool family history stories. Now let's get back to your primary book here. So what was there a single moment that you were like, boom, this is it, I got to do it? Or did it just happen over time?
I've been wanting to do kids' books. I love kids' books. I love writing them. I love reading them. My calling in life, I found it when I was the primary song leader. It's the greatest calling in the church. Fantastic. And I just love that age, that young minds. And it's so, I was just thinking, how do we make this fun and interesting? Well, you can't do it by grabbing it off the wall and reading in paragraph form the Family Proclamation to my 2-year-old. That's not going to be helpful. My 5-year-old isn't going to be interested in that. And so it's like, you got to put a hidden butterfly on every page and you got to make it fun. You got to make the art fun. You got to make it rhyme. You got to translate it into their language. And I knew I wanted to do that, but Family Proclamation was the first book I wanted to do for sure because That's the biggest need we have. Is like, okay, let's get this crazy doctrine that we're afraid to teach and that we're taught counter to this now in schools and other places. Let's get this.
Well, and how many times was it repeated in this last conference? I want to say at least like 3.
Yeah.
Like they had 3 separate messages that all centered around the Family Proclamation.
Yeah, Elder Razban's talk was all about it, the history of it.
Yeah.
And then Elder Oaks was all about the family as well. And Elder Razban's talk was called "Words from God." Was the title of his talk. It's all about
there
the
it
family.
is.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So for all those people who are leaning in the camp of like, well, this is more policy. This is a document of policy. This isn't actually doctrine. Elder Razban's coming out swinging, saying, no. This is straight from the big man himself. And he's giving that pop, bam. So that's great. What kind of response have you gotten so far from fathers, mothers, families as they've read this?
Well, I had a few people read it beforehand. Some that I know believe everything in the Family Proclamation, and I had some read it that I knew had a big problem with the Family Proclamation. And it was interesting to get feedback on that. I didn't change much based on some of the feedback. But what I did change initially when I wrote it, there's some scenes in there where like the Family Proclamation talks about those who don't honor their covenants, right? And so I'm like, how do I illustrate that? And so at one point during the books, there was this scene of like parents fighting in the neighbor's home, and there was kind of this scary scene, and the kid is like, oh, what do I do? There's turmoil in my home. And the feedback I got from several parents is like, that's too scary for a kid. Like, we don't want to be like showing divorce or whatever. And I'm like, that's true. That's true. So we made that part a little bit more tame. One of my
Did you give the mom a turtleneck?
Right. Yeah. One of my proofreaders told me to take out the blue-haired feminist in the book, and I didn't do that. I kept her in.
Ooh.
So that's a non-negotiable right there. So we got our motherhood is oppressive right there.
Ooh, right there.
Sharing on social media.
The shaved sides too.
Yeah. But no, the overwhelming response, apart from that, those who have read the book have loved it and are like, oh, I'm stoked to tell my kids, or those who have read it to their kids, which is very few so far, said that their kids are all over. They're like, oh yeah, the little girl reminded me of my little girl, and she was like, that's me, so that's what we're going for.
Oh, that's awesome. So Tember, I know that you've had quite a few instances where you've seen media, maybe even books, that you've risen some red flags over for your kids. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to get good materials that counteract, like what you were saying, Austin, the worldly voices out there. And even within the church, it seems like there's people who are adopting the language of the world,
right,
from particular influencers. And so, I mean, there's the obvious books that they're trying to ban in like schools and stuff that are pretty, like grotesque and just like getting into really nasty stuff. But even like in Deseret books, there's some authors who are questionable, and I'm like, I love that you're countering this with something that's coming from a faithful perspective, and you're not being overt about it, but like, I mean, it's pretty clear, what you're referring to. Like the kids, it probably goes over the kids' heads, some of the imagery,
yeah. I will say it's probably a little bit more overt than what members of the church typically get, which is kind of fun. Yeah, because I don't think you typically see that in Deseret book. Typically, you see it sway the other way, where it's it leans a little bit more progressive. It leans a little bit more into the territory of like, well, let's show our pride support, and let's get the rainbow paraphernalia and all of that. So, I have seen that.
I was just gonna say, the sad thing is most of the materials coming from members of the church are leaning left. Queer Mormon, what is it called? Queer Mormon Doctrine by Blair Ostler. It's like trying to incorporate the blue hair women into the like normalizing it rather than like pointing out the false doctrine there. So anyways.
It's the Family Proclamation it's a lightning rod, right? I mean, it's full of doctrines that, because of the world we live in today, are just by default going to be super controversial. It goes over gender.
Yeah.
It says get married. It talks about procreation. It talks about marriage between a man and a woman. It talks about all sorts of things. Any one of these issues could be like a major issue that people have. But what we tried to do is like, okay, let's start with the doctrine. I basically took the Family Proc and took it sentence by sentence and turned it into little bullet points. What's the doctrine here that we need to teach in the book? And then we said, what page does this go on? What page does this go on? Then we said, how do we make it rhyme? And then after that, we said, okay, now the art really has to tell a story throughout. And so at the basis of that, we didn't just tell a story and say, oh, it's about a family. No, we said, like, we've got to teach procreation in here somehow. We've got to teach, all these things. So I'll share a couple pages here.
Yeah, go for it.
Of how we kind of approach certain issues. So here's one, page 2. You lived with your heavenly parents above, a father and mother who filled you with love. You've had a gender, girl or boy, from the start. It's part of your spirit, your body, your heart. So it goes through kind of premortal is where it starts.
Look at that.
Once they come down to
that's
earth.
cutting right against Charlie Bird's theory of being a different gendered spirit than what he came to Earth as, right?
Yep.
Mm.
Wait,
Awesome.
where are the they thems in there? I don't see that.
Yeah, that's the sequel. We're gonna do
part 2. Yeah, the behind
2.
the scenes. Yeah.
And we got
Sorry,
this
I cut
one.
you off. Yeah, keep going.
We got, what is this? In the middle somewhere here. But where did this start, this whole family thing? With Adam and Eve in the Garden of Spring, God gave them commandments and covenants too. Get married, have children, and teach what is true. And they're both wearing the new garments, so, a little bit more skin
Nice.
there. Than
Awesome.
Yeah, they got the tank tops. Yeah.
yeah.
Alyssa Grenfell's pulling out her hair like, oh no, how am I going to separate myself now?
That's right.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as fathers, we're called to provide, preside, and protect over our families. How do you see that stewardship applying to the kinds of media that we allow our kids to watch and read?
Right. I think especially when they're young, we do have control over what is in our home. And it's hard. Like I try not to do as many streaming services, and I try to just like buy a couple movies that I know are cool or whatever. But then if I buy the movie on Amazon, then you have to scroll through Amazon to get to your own. Like, it's hard because there's always a screen somewhere with a million choices. But especially with kids' books, it's like I have control over what's on their bookshelf when they're a little kid. I really do. And so I think it's a great place to start. I love reading gospel-centered books. I love reading the kids' version of the scriptures, anything I get my hands on like that. And I think we have control over it.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was Elder Bednar once came out saying, somebody asked him, when should I start doing family home evening with my children? And he said, in the womb. Like, that's how early you should be starting to think about these concepts and these principles and start training them into your family. And I thought that was actually pretty profound because, and it seems like you're saying the same thing where you're saying little kids. I think you're referring probably to toddlers. Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Just as early as we can start reinforcing the doctrine, start teaching them the doctrine so that when they go out into the world, because when they go out today, like when we were growing up, we would go out, everyone was still more or less on the same playing field when it came to the value system. But now, as we're becoming a minority with our values and our principles, it seems like we're going to have to prepare. We have to do that much more preparation work, like Captain Moroni, building these forts. We have to create these Uber children that are like, hey, you're ready. You are completely ready to go as soon as you leave that door, which that's going to take a lot of work. But I love where you're starting. You're saying, let's just start young and let's get some actually doctrinally founded media into the hands of our really small kids, and let's get them to love that from a young age. Because it's hard to love a conference talk when you're that young.
If they're old enough to watch Peppa Pig, I think they ought to be taught that gender is eternal. I think that's a point where it's like, okay, we need to teach that. If we wait till they're
and especially if
teenagers,
they're watching Peppa Pig, they should definitely. You got to keep an eye on those kids.
Bingo.
Yeah. Stay away from the Tylenol.
Yeah.
Well, the sad thing is you have to be careful even with innocent shows like that. Cause like I've talked about this before. Like my kids started getting into the new My Little Pony series, and I didn't think anything of it because the 80s and 90s version was just so benign and cheesy. And then I started looking at it, and the creators are totally like shoving down gay characters into that show. It's really
Not
sick.
to mention furries, man. Not to mention furries. Gotta be careful.
But I wanted to say also, like I add my third witness to teaching your kids at a really early age and doing it frequently, reiterating it over and over again. Something I've done in my home with my kids is I frequently will bring them over to this painting I have it's called In Their Image by Caitlin Connolly. Maybe you could stick that in the video.
Yeah.
But I have them look at it frequently when we're doing our scripture study or other gospel discussions and talking about, like with my daughter, I would say, hey, Blythe, you're modeled after Heavenly Mother's image. And my son, Abinadi, I'll say, hey, you're modeled after Heavenly Father's image. And you can become like them. And I do it over and over and over. And when I had to talk to my daughter finally one day because of the My Little Pony crap, I brought up that same painting saying, you know how Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother are married, and we're supposed to have be like them and have a family and have children like them. Well, My Little Pony's teaching some bad things where boys can be with boys and girls can be with girls, and she was shocked by that because to her she already knows what the heavenly model is supposed to be like, you know.
Right.
And so, and it's just I think it is so crucial for us to go over that doctrine over and over again with our kids from a really early age, because then it just helps make sexuality and like your body functions, puberty, all that makes a lot more sense when you understand that doctrine. So anyway, okay, my rant's over.
I like that. So I have a question for both of you. So where do you think the line is between protecting our children's innocence versus over sheltering them from the world?
Yeah. I think in almost all circumstances, they're going to learn and hear things younger than you would imagine.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we need to totally throw out lines in the sand for certain things that you teach. But if they have a kid that's 2 years older than them, then they're going to hear something. If they have a friend that's a couple years older than them, they're going to hear something a couple years earlier. If they have access to any sort of technology, they're going to run into things. First time I ran into something was on a school computer in elementary school before I even heard the talk or anything. And, I'm on the library computer at elementary school, and I think I was looking up like Legos or something. I was looking up boys' toys. Can you imagine what comes up on the screen, right?
Oh,
yeah,
no.
That was my first experience. How old was I? Like 8, 9, 10 on a school library computer.
Judas
right?
Priest.
And that was in, what was that, 20 or 2000, whatever. Like, it's so prevalent. They're going to run into stuff. And so you've got to be able to teach and help. I mean, you've got to ingrain it in them. You really do.
Yeah, there are those people out there that will cry and shake their fist at the heavens. They'll say, you're brainwashing your children. How dare you? To which, my brothers have always said this, is like, if we don't brainwash our children, the world will. You know, it's like this idea of brainwashing, it goes both ways, So we're trying to instill the correct, the right and true operating system in our children. And tools
Jeffrey
like this
Thain
are only going to help.
Jeffrey Thain says that our children are getting baptized into religion they never even consented to. And it's not through priestly robes. It's through our media. that we let into our homes, right?
I feel like preempting stuff that could happen is more important than waiting for it to happen. I could be wrong on that, but like for instance, like something I do with my kids, it's not uncommon for children when they're playing. Well, I should backtrack. My kids go over to the neighbors' houses all the times and go play in their houses and stuff, and like it's not uncommon for kids to start experimenting sexually with one another. And because I know it happened with me when I was a little boy with another little boy, and so I've I've given my kids boundaries, and when they ask me why do you have those boundaries, I tell them because some kids experiment and they touch each other's private parts, and I don't want you to do that. And if any kid asks you to do that, don't do it. Tell their parents and tell me. And so, like,
100%.
I think it's helping. It's taking the those gray areas out of life and helping them see like, oh, these are no-nos. These are things that we shouldn't do. And like,
well, I think you're onto something there.
Yeah.
I think it's the same principle behind wearing a seatbelt when you get into a car. You know, you
Mhm.
teach your children, you put the seatbelt on because if you don't have that seatbelt, you're going to go right through the windshield, you know, or you're
Mhm.
going to get tossed and you're probably going to die. You put the
Yeah.
seatbelt on as a way to protect you and your children.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that starts as soon as you get them into the car. You don't wait until
Yeah.
they're ready for the seatbelt. You don't wait for someone else to tell you to put the seatbelt on them. You immediately put that seatbelt on them because it's a
Right.
dangerous situation. So I think I 100% agree with you when you're saying get the seatbelt on the kids. You know,
Mhm.
metaphorically, let's start preparing our kids for these conversations as early as we can and in normal and natural ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, that's been started with teaching our kids like, hey, the proper terminology for their anatomy, like not using euphemisms or
Not using
nicknames or
nicknames
anything.
or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I was talking to a neighbor of mine the other day, and he was a counselor at a school. One of the most common places kids first get exposed to pornography or experiment sexually with another kid is at sleepovers. And I'm
Oh,
like, thank you for that. Like, because I think some people are like, "Oh, come on, stop being so like negative about everything." And I'm like, you know what? It happened with me. It happened with my brother. I don't want it to happen to
oh
my
yeah,
kids. So it's
100%.
sleepovers are just not an option, no matter how
It's
much I
just a
trust.
no-no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no. Yeah, no, we're exactly the same. Like, no sleepovers ever,
yeah.
And I am so glad that my dad enforced that rule with me because I did have some friends that did not share my values as a youth. And they invited me. They would actually ask me to ask my dad to have a sleepover. And I was way too agreeable as a kid. So I'd just be like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. And I probably would have had the sleepover if my dad didn't actually go over because it got to a point where this kid's dad approached me when I was playing at his house and he was like, hey, we'd love to have a sleepover. Like, you can come over here. And I was just like, oh, okay. But eventually he talked to my dad and my dad was like, yeah, we don't do that. And I was just like, thank you, Dad. Oh, but that's what kids need. They need a parent that's like, we're going to have a hard boundary here.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what role do you think creativity plays in defending LDS doctrine?
I am not the best artist whatsoever, and I'm terrible with using AI. But like, for instance, something little that I've done with my kids to help them understand like the gravity of the atonement more, and like, and especially like when the emblems of the sacrament are going around, is I made this AI photo of like different stages of the atonement, and I have them look at that during the sacrament. Like I have like Jesus holding up the bread and the wine, and then I have his suffering in Gethsemane and him being smitten by the priests, and then I have him um being flogged and then on the cross, and then I have a picture of the resurrection. And so
Yeah.
I want them to see the full scope of the atonement, and then so Yeah, it was just something I felt inspired to do, and it's helped them to focus on Jesus a little bit more. And of course, they're still squirrely and stuff during sacrament, but at
For
least I
sure.
can be like, hey, let's think about Jesus here. So,
That's great.
so
It's
yeah, I
almost like
think,
the stained glass windows in cathedrals
yeah,
that you'll see that
yeah,
depict all
yeah.
of those scenes. Like, I love that idea.
Yeah, let's bring that back. Seriously, if we could have like more like Eastern Orthodox style
Oh
like
yeah,
churches, that'd be freaking
That'd
yeah.
be amazing.
awesome. It's
Yeah.
like let's get rid of all this crappy like Protestant white walls. Like let's put like icons everywhere. That'd be so awesome.
Yeah.
But
And let me
anyway.
be one of the first to like hold a banner that says like, hey, let's get rid of the scratchy carpet half wall thing. I don't know what that is, but you get pushed up
Yes.
against that, man, it's terrible. It just
Yeah.
ruins your Sabbath day. If you could challenge every LDS dad that's listening to this podcast right now to do one thing to reclaim their family's culture, what would that challenge be?
President Oak said something really cool in the end of his talk. He said, take family stories and use them as teaching tools. Tell your family stories to your kids. I think more powerful than the books that we buy are our own conversion stories, our own stories of I was talking to Hayden Paul the other day, and he said he told his wife's birth story to his kids, and it helped them like gain respect for their mom. And I was like, that's so cool. So we did that last night. I'm like, we gotta do that. Tell the stories of kind of your own family's origin stories, and that's going to ingrain in them a sense of identity. It's going to teach doctrine. It's going to teach resilience, all sorts of things. So I would say that's a good place to start.
I
Oh,
love that.
100%. So we have some great family historians in my family. And so we have books and books and books of stories. And every Sunday is our family history scripture study day. And so we actually read those books to our kids. And it's funny because there's one ancestor that we have. It's this gal who broke her leg in England. Her friend was playing like Ring Around the Rosies, got really intense. She was swinging her around. Her leg hit a lamppost and it just snapped her ankle sideways. And she was too poor to get it fixed. So she ended up having to just walk on the stump. So her foot was just like completely parallel with the ground. And she walked on that thing all the way across the plains to Utah. And
Jeez.
it's interesting because it's funny because the other day, my kids didn't want to go to school. It was cold outside. We're in Texas, so it got probably like 50 degrees outside, maybe 60s. And my kids were complaining. And my daughter, to comfort her younger brother, who was really upset about having to go to school, she was like, hey, remember the pioneers and remember that they had to go through really hard times? We can do this. And I just sat back. I was like, oh, it worked. Look at that.
Wow.
It's giving her perspective where she's like, yeah, it may be a little cold from the nice car, like that 50 feet into the school building. But we're going to get through this because I've got an ancestor that walked thousands of miles on a broken ankle, going through the snow. And so I think that's incredible. 100% agree with that. Okay. Well, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah. What do you think a good sequel is? What book, if you could write any book for a toddler that you feel like we need in the church, what do you want to see? What culture should I create? Because we're gonna do it. We're gonna do more.
Maybe
Temper, why don't you go first?
I don't know. Maybe one specifically about procreation, because you kind of touch on it, but like talking about that and like how it's a good and beautiful thing. And I think setting them up to instead of like this negative purity culture where we don't even discuss sexuality at all, discussing it from a gospel centered perspective and how beautiful and amazing it is, and that it can only be done with a man and a woman, period. There's no other way for it to be done. I don't know. To me, that's what I'm trying to do personally with my kids, is help them to, in age appropriate ways, like understand the beauty and the power of procreation. And like something that President, oh my gosh, Packer said in his last talk that he gave. was he said that procreation is not an incidental part of the plan. He said it is the plan of happiness. And like that stood out to me so powerfully. So anyway, I think that might be a good sequel, in my opinion.
Dang, Tember, you're brave. I kind of copped out on the procreation. It's in here, but it says in marriage there's power to help babies grow. How does that work? Ask your parents; they know. I kind of just divert to the
Yeah. Yeah, he's got the guy in there that's reinforcing the happy wife, happy life mantra. Where she's like, oh, yeah. Well, what I would do, I guess my suggestion for a book would be finding really great miracles, like modern day pioneer miracles from this dispensation, and creating children's book about miracles, because I do think we live in a day where miracles are becoming less and less and less of a thing. I feel like people in the church are, I guess, fewer people in the church believe in miracles. I feel like today than they did a while back.
Yeah, has the day of miracles ceased?
Right.
And it kind of feels that way sometimes. Like do we believe in them? You know, do we really believe in them? That's great.
Yeah. Well, I think that would be fantastic. Okay, and then final question. So how much of Midjourney did you use for the book? Was it like mostly like Midjourney, or did you get like illustrators? Or
this book was illustrated by a guy named John Xavier, and he's very, very talented. So we didn't use Midjourney for this one. It was a little above Midjourney's pay grade. John Joshua Xavier.
Okay, well, we're probably getting close to time. So before we wrap it up, we're going to plug dadsneedfriends.com. That is our community of dads. It's a great time. We talk faith, we talk family, we talk finance, pretty much everything we've been talking tonight. We talk in that Discord channel, support groups every Wednesday. We game every Thursday. It's a good time. So be sure to check that out. dadsneedfriends.com, dadsneedfriends.com. And then
is it Dads Need Friends?
That's right. Dads Need Friends.
I like it.
So it's a
support. Sounds a little bit like a dating website, but I like it. Like it's one of those
100%.
weird Draper, Utah sites or something.
Not necessarily like a Bumble thing, but yeah, no, we created it more along the lines of after seeing like the suicide rates among men in Utah, we're like, oof, there's a big male loneliness epidemic among married men, and so we're trying to combat that by helping them get some friends. Cool. And so for all those women out there, get your husband some friends, for crying out loud.
Go. Love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, we've got Austin Falter, and where can they pick up your book?
Yeah, littlesaintsbooks.com or plainandpreciouspublishing.com. You'll be able to find a copy of my book.
Right on. We'll probably get a link from you and put that in the description.
Yeah, we can give you guys a discount code in the description for the viewers of your channel.
Right on. Yeah, we'll probably do that too. So get your discount code in the description, and let's support some active, faithful, faith-promoting men out there. And then we got Tember Harward and Beacon Saints, and as well as musingsofaqueersaint.com, or is it .org?
Yeah, musingsofaqueersaint.org.
There we go. My name is Hayden Holm, and this is Salty Saints. We'll see ya.